Hey guys, Daniel James here, and today what we're going to be doing is taking a look at my new sample library, Project Bravo. Project Bravo's the follow-up or the successor to my first ever sample library, which was called Project Alpha. And the way we're going to do this video is the same way we do any other one, is I've written a short track in the background here. And what we're going to do is take a listen to that first, and then what I'll do is I'll dissect that track, showing how I use Project Bravo in it. And then I'll go on to talk about all the fun features in Project Bravo and, you know, the types of sounds you get with the library, what you could do with it and all that fun stuff. So without further ado, let's take a listen to the track. Here we go. So that's the short track I wrote. So what is Project Bravo? So Project Bravo is a sound design sample library, mainly aimed at like film and video game composers or TV composers. And essentially what it is a collection of hybrid sound design, things like whoosh bangs, risers, downers, impacts, all those things you hear in trailers, video games and whatnot. But with Project Bravo, what we've actually tried to do is, instead of just doing what we did in Project Alpha, just push forward and, you know, try and push the whole genre a little bit further forward by, you know, creating a user interface where you're not just playing back samples. What we were trying to do is make it so that you can make your own sounds, you know, make your own patches and things that we haven't thought of and, you know, no one else has. That way, you know, the library lasts much longer and everybody sounds unique. But yeah, so let's take a look at what we did in the actual track. So let's start off. This is what the actual user interface looks like, as you could probably tell. There's plenty going on, but don't worry, we'll cover it all. So yeah, let's just start at the very top. So let's solo out a few patches. So patch number 1. So we've got this one here. So as you can hear, this is a kind of rhythmic, pulsing type thing. And that's one of the actual focuses of the library is what we're calling kinetic motion. So a lot of the library has this kind of driving force behind it because what we wanted to give people is an easy way to add like movement to a piece of music, you know, because, you know, there's you know, as a working composer myself, there's hundreds of times where I just need like a little kind of just something pulsing in the music to give it drive. And, you know, you can load up a synth and, you know, build a patch that does something like it, but, you know, it's a synth is more designed to be a jack of all trades, whereas this we're aiming very specifically for these kinds of rhythmic, you know, these interesting rhythmic things. So like this patch here, this is a good example. So if we listen to that again, you hear that's got that do 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 do. So that's all being generated basically, as you can see by the MIDI information. It's just one straight line. So all I did was hold down one key. I'll just show you. I'll just hold a different key. And as you can hear, so that's all happening basically here. So this is our step sequencer section. So you just come up, you click on the text and it'll load up the thing here. And like in Project Alpha, we have, like a 16-step sequencer like this. But what we've done is we've decided to like kind of expand upon what we did before. So these numbers above, you change these and these correspond to the chord that you're holding. So like if you look down here, if I hold like a D minor here and then change this to 3, 1, 2, 1. You hear I'm creating like a pattern there just by changing those numbers there. And what these numbers mean is, so if you look down here, I'm holding D minor, and number 1 will always be your furthest left note, and the higher the number goes, the more to the right. So number 2, so this would be number 1 because it's the furthest to the left. Number 2 would be F because it's the next one up, and then A would be number 3. And if I was to put a D on top, that D would be number 4. So the higher the number, the more to the right the key is. But for this patch, what I did is I just, I dragged these down to number 1. So all I have to do is hold a key. And I've got like a nice rhythmic pulse building, And, I can change this just by clicking and dragging on one of these. So it's really simple to, get in and just swoop around, do some changes. And then if you look underneath here, we have like these little like plus icon type things. And these are panning. So you can, if you wanted, like do an entire hard left, hard right pan thing. I'll just turn the delay off so you can hear a bit clearer. I think I actually have some, I have some reverb on there as well. So as you can hear, those first rhythmic beats are actually panning left and right. This is awesome for creating like, if you want a bit of rhythm in the actual track. On this one, I had it towards the end so that it goes left, right, left, right. And it almost adds like a kind of rhythmic like to it. Which is a cool little thing. So yeah, like I said, all I did is, I hold the key and it plays back the step sequencer, which you can turn on and off just by hitting the note by itself. Sounds like this. So the step sequencer on. Boom. So yeah, there was another little cool thing I wanted to show you about this. So one of the things that we've done, we found quite exciting is, like I mentioned a minute ago, we're trying to do this kind of kinetic motion type approach to the synthesis engine we've got going on here. Well, there is no synthesis, but sample playback. Anyway, I digress. What we tried to do is give people the opportunity, because we know that when people make rhythms like this, they like to double that up with other instruments. When you're doing a kind of a pulsy underbed to one of your pieces of music, you tend not to want it to just be one piece, one instrument. Sometimes you want to double it with a drum, or you want to double it with a string patch. So what we've done is, if you see this little section down here, this is basically our drag MIDI feature. This gives like people the ability to take whatever's going on in the step sequencer and then apply it to another patch. So all you need to do is, so let's say this is 3, like I said earlier, 3, 1, 2, 1, and I hold a chord. So I'll hold a D minor. Well, actually, there we go, D minor. And then all I'd have to do is push the grab MIDI while the keys are held down. And then you see the drag MIDI feature comes up. And then all I have to do is click and drag that, and I can put that MIDI sequence that I just played onto like, I could drag it onto anything, that could be doubled up with a drum. So as you see, dip it. Even like you can even throw in the velocity information. The velocity information goes with it. So, if you've got something that's like all the way up, they'll all be all the way up. If you want to add, say you wanted to program a drum line, for example, and you wanted it to be, to variate. Sometimes like when you're coming down here and you're putting in, like MIDI notes, like this or something, and you're trying to do it, you're trying to do it all quick and stuff. you might do something, like this, but they all come in and it's just a pain to come and, change all these down like this. Whereas, if you're feeling lazy, just boot this up and just go, okay, I want it to be a bit like that. And then, I'll hold down I'll change all these back to number 1. And then, grab MIDI, drag that over the top of it. And now I've got that, that nice sequenced information. If I play the, I probably need to turn the strings on. Oh, what did I do wrong? Did I do something wrong? Maybe the MIDI's down. Anyway, yeah, the strings are working. Anyway, so let me drag this back up. Oh, now I need to remember what the rhythm was. It was like da 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 da. Close enough. So if I just let that play back with the actual strings now. Oh. As you can see, the information in the MIDI here is actually what I played here. Drag that in. I actually played that too high. And you can see it's actually kept the MIDI information that I've done here, so it sounds a bit wrong. So I need to just replace that, change that MIDI. And then, So you see how that doubles up nice and easy. I'll just go back to the version I did earlier with a bit softer dynamics. So yeah, if you do a like a synth line or something, or something crazy like this one down here, this is actually the booms, but you see it goes 1 3 2 4 1 2 1 2. If you're not particularly well versed, or you're not lazy, but you don't have time to write this complex ostinato or something, you could just whack this up and bust out a few different chords. So let's do the 3 1 2 1 again, and now let's say I want D minor to B flat, so I go D minor. I'll play it down here. So D minor, and we'll drag that in. And then I want it to go to B flat next, so I'll just move this A. If you look down here, I'll just move this A up to B flat. Grab MIDI, drag that in. Now let's say I wanted it to go to F, like F second inversion or something. Just grab that MIDI, drag that in. And then, I want the C major. Just drag that in, and now, if I come back over here now, and just look at all these together. Oh, I need the strings. Turn the expression up. I think maybe the MIDI's down. What am I doing wrong here? Oh, maybe they're too high. Yeah, they were too high up. So so now we have the D minor. Oh, it's too high. As you can see, I've accidentally put this hit way too hard. I mean, it depends on the string library you're using, really. But yeah, you can lay that in. I've got some drums over here. Let me find maybe a snare sound or something. What am I using? Oh, I need to unsolo everything. Let's say we've got that, for example. So I'll come down here. Let's take this information. Let's just tidy this up a bit. Right. So if I take like this information here, so we want it to be a bit more like this. I'll grab that MIDI, and now I'll drag it onto I forget which track it was. Maybe it was this one. Was it this one? No. This one. See, this is why I don't edit my videos. You get to see me fumble around. So what I wanted to change there was I hadn't changed the number 3 back yet. So let me just bring this up. Here we go. So I changed these back to number 1, so I'm just dealing with 1 key. So just solo this as well. Grab that MIDI. Now let's drag that MIDI on there. Geez, there we go. You know, I could double that up. So it's a cool way of, you know, adding some extra rhythmic kind of layers to your music. And, you know, you guys have heard me bang on many a time about how important layering different instruments together to get a bigger sound is. So this is one of the easy, cool ways of doing it. You know, you can literally in a few seconds just drag in some MIDI information. You hold down the key, grab the MIDI, and then chuck it in. So yeah, that was the first patch that I threw in. So let's move down. So the second one is booms. So let's take a listen to these. I'll turn off the other things first. So, like I mentioned, in Project Alpha particularly, the entire library was pretty much made of pre-baked sounds, which are sounds where we've sound designed them, and then you can drag them in, and that can be that. And like I said, that's all great, and we understand the value of that. We've heard some of our Project Alpha sounds in like the Dark Knight Rises trailers, and video games and TV and film. We've heard it in everything, which is awesome. But after a while, if you hear the same sounds over and over again, people don't want to hear them anymore. So, like I mentioned, we've put all this functionality on the front so that you can, change those up. And one cool thing we did, so this is just the booms again. And like I said, we understand the importance. So we've kept a lot of that. You could still come in and there's still tons of different, tons of individual booms and sound effects pre-baked. And again, this is open wave format. So if you so desire, you can come down and let's see here, Project Bravo. You can come in here and load up all your let me load up the sample folder. Bear with me. Where is it? There we go. You can come down here. You can load up your Project Bravo sample folder. And you've got like, if you come to your drums, for example, you've got all your loops. You come down, you've got booms. So let's say, for example, I didn't want to deal with the interface. I could make a nice audio track, and then I could just drag the actual boom in. You can manipulate that, mess with that however you like. A lot of companies these days tend to lock the file format, which as a working composer is kind of irritating because, sometimes I've got like effects plugins and things that I want to put on the actual sounds to manipulate them my own way. And, when they're a locked file format, it means you have to load up Kontakt and, that takes up more CPU, and then you have to either render it down and re-export. It just takes up time. So I just like having the open wave format so I can mess with it. But anyway, like I said, we've added all these types of booms and type sounds like this. So let me with the booms show you, take you over what you can actually do with the interface. So as you can see, like Alpha, we've got the effects section down here. So the filter is always on the mod wheel here. So you can get some nice subby type sounds. Grit, with Alpha we had one type of distortion. It was like a saturation distortion, but it took up like 90% of the CPU or something. It was completely out of our control. That was a Kontakt CPU spike. So we've changed the distortion this time to be grit. And this is a really aggressive kind of distortion. I'll do it on a low one so it doesn't blow you. And the way this one works, you've got preamp down here, which is like how much of it you want. And you can really overdrive it. And then, obviously bass, mid, and high does the kind of EQing. So that's pushing more bass into the distortion. That pushes more mids, and this pushes more high. You know, it's a lot. And when you've got the preamp all the way up, it kind of has this really nasty overdrive, which I personally love. And you know, you can combine that with the filter. The filter's always after the effects unit, so you'll always get a nice, you know, it'll always cover all the effects over, so you won't get that hiss out of the filter. Down here we have the compactor thing again. This is a bit crusher mixed with a sample rate adjuster and a noise generator. So you know, you can hear the noise. And a lot of people probably wouldn't care for having noise, but you know, I'll show you a bit more of that when we get into the step sequencer. But yeah, I'll turn the noise down. So this is the bit crusher, and then this is the sample rate adjuster. So as you can see, you can get some nasty type sounds. Again, it's the filter goes after all of this. So, and then we have the punch. Well, let me show you the punch in a second. So we'll come back to the effects in literally just a second. So let's have a look at the ADSR section. So over here in alpha we had ADSR for amp and filter, and this time we've added pitch to it. But let's start with the amp. So ADSR, if you don't know, is attack, decay, sustain, release, and it's basically a modulation source for whatever it's for. So if it's an amp ADSR, it's controlling how the amp works. So with a slow attack, you know, sounds come in slow. You know, you're shaping it so that the amp, if you think of the amp as volume, so the volume fades in with the attack. And then decay is how long it takes the amp in this case to get from the attack stage to the sustain. So if the sustain's all the way down, that's going to be turning the volume all the way down. If the sustain's all the way up, it's how long it takes to get from the attack to the sustain, which in this case is full. I won't go into exactly how attack, decay, sustain, release works all the time. That's a subject for another day. But let's say, for example, I turn sustain all the way down. Now I can really tighten up the sound, because the volume is now only taking the decay amount of time, which is, I don't know, maybe about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock here, to go from attack straight to sustain. If I pull the attack up, it's now doing the attack stage, so it's fading in, and once it's finished, however long the attack is, once it's finished that stage, it only takes like half a second to go back down to 0. It can be complex, but yeah. So the cool things you could do with this are, for example, like I said, you can shorten how you can tighten up a note. So as you hear, that's got a lot of tail. So you see, I'm getting just the thud there. But so yeah, if I drag this over now to filter, as you can see, these are all independent of one another. So now I can control the filter. So if I bring the filter down, I can actually control how much of the filter effect is like how the amp worked. So I can fade the filter on, so it's kind of doing, something like this. If it fades in, it'd be like. I'm manually moving the mod wheel here. Let me just click this so you can actually see it represented here. So like that would be like a slow attack, and then if you keep your eyes here. So if I did like a fast attack or like a slow attack, sorry, so it faded in, and then a short decay to a 0 sustain, it would go like that. So it's hard to show. So if we look over here, this is the int knob. So that stands for intensity. So, if you want an effect to be more apparent, think of it almost like a mix or an amount dial. So what I'll do here is I'll make it so that the filter instantly comes on. So it'll, because the attack's all the way down, the decay and sustain is instant. So let me bring the sustain all the way down. So what's going to happen is it's going to take however long the decay goes to get down to the bottom. So let me turn the intensity all the way up. So as you can hear now, I can just have a clicky. So let me just make it so the sustain. So if I bring my filter down now with this ADSR on it, you can hear how it's keeping that kind of thuddiness of the. But I can, I can control how much comes through, so you can make like your own kind of clicky sounds. And of course, these don't sound anything like the bass patch, like the bass patches. And well, let me pick. So that's that bit. If I pull the filter down, that sounds different. That's more of a sub sound. And then if we throw like some really nasty sounds over the top, even some noise generator, and then make it. We're making it so that, these effects are poking through with the ADSR. If I turn these off and then that down, and this is what we started with. So you can see, and another cool thing you can do is, let's say you did all that, so you made like your percussive type sound. Made it really clicky. Added a bit more delay. So yeah, I wanted to come back to the effects here. So the punch is a transient designer. So a transient designer, if you don't know, it basically, you can turn up the volume of the initial attack, the initial hit sound, that kind of click sound at the beginning of any sound, be it a drum or whatever. And the sustain is after that initial attack. There's like the tail. So let me show you like a reverse thing here. So we look like on this, let me just reverse this over. So the transient on this would be here. You see where this point is? So this is like the initial transient, and then the sustain is this whole section here. So you can actually control the volume, or you can control the amount of those with the punch. So if I turn this on, and then if I turn the attack up, you can hear how it makes that initial attack really strong, and the sustain. So a lower sustain will be a tighter sound, and then all the way up will be a looser type sound. But let's make this like really percussive. And now a cool thing we can do is we can actually turn on the step sequencer. So how I showed it works with the synths, you can also use it on the percussive, the sound design sounds. It works on anything. And the cool thing about this is because of the ADSR, if you set it up even like this, you could rip this, directly into your own patches. This is a good way to make anything sound short, like really aggressive, attacky. And then you bring down your mod wheel so that it's on, and then you just whack on the step sequencer, and you see this, the highest number on this is 4, so I need to, push at least 4 keys. And let's keep in mind, I'm just working with booms here, just those. That whole rhythm, that whole everything came just by using the UI there. So, there's the cool things you could do with those. But like this other ADSR that I didn't mention is the pitch. And so a lot of people are probably wondering why we even bothered with pitch. So let's say we've got a sound like this, for example. Now, if I turn the intensity up, you'll hear, or you might have heard, that there was a sharper attack on that. And the reason we added this is actually we're kind of borrowing the technique from like dance producers or, popular music people. So a pitch envelope is quite often used to create a really sharp transient where there isn't one. So this one here, like this patch here, hasn't got much of an attack. It's just a woof. But if I turn this up, you hear it's added a click to it. And it does this by basically, it controls the pitch here. So, well, it's not this, but there's an internal pitch to each note. And what so the ADSR here is basically controlling this dial, or one like it inside. So a slow attack, it would slowly pitch up the note. If it was like a decay down to sustain, what it's doing is starting here. Well, it's going from 0 and then up the top and then back down to 0, like really fast. However quick this is, and I could show you how. Let me raise the decay. There's a cool sound, maybe with some grit on it. And so you see, like, just using the ADSRs, you can get like really kind of weirdly creative with even the most basic sound sources. So below that we have the delay, rate, bounce, feedback, the kind of normal things. And as you see, these ones don't have a little LED light, to turn it on. So the delay and the reverb are always on. They're sends, and they're controlled by down here. So if you want, let me just make this short to demonstrate. So if you say, for example, you want like a really delay filled thing, set it to maybe 6, which is like a triplet. Oh, by the way, I didn't mention the parameter display here. Anything you change, you can see updated over in this little box here. But yeah, so if I bring it up to 6, which is like a typical kind of triplet sound, and then bring up the feedback, you hear that kind of. If you want lots of delay, you can bring it up so it's really loud. Bounce is like how far left and right. So if you just want a mono delay, if you want it to go left and right, whack up the bounce. And then damp, basically puts a dampener on it. So it's almost like it's closing a filter, a low pass filter, over time. So it'll get more muffled the more delays you have on, which is cool. And then reverb, you can control here. Turn it down a bit. By the way, the volume here is always attached to the expression wheel. So if you have a MIDI CC controller, you can adjust the volume here. Or in MIDI, you can, come to expression, and it will change. As you watch that little dial up at the top there. Am I doing it on the wrong patch? I think I am. But yeah, you can adjust the volume. Anyway, yeah, you can adjust the volume of them by using expression. As you can see, I'm moving. Well, you can't see it, but I'm moving the expression wheel on my controller. Anyway, so where did we get to? So we've done reverb. So reverb, you can make it a really long reverb, pull it up. This is convolution reverb. So, sometimes if you move it, you'll get like this weird click. So you just do it, and then, you hit it once or twice. But after a while, it figures out the length. So now we've got a really long reverb. And let's say, for example, we wanted like a really, just a subby kind of reverb. What we could do is bring down the low pass. Again, it'll give it a bit of an update. And now when I hit it, you're only hearing the low reverb. Again, I'll just drag that down a bit. As you can hear, the bass is overloading quite a bit. So that gives me a good opportunity to come over to the top right, which is the equalizer. So the equalizer works like this. So you have like your low, mid, and high. So low's on the left and high's on the right. And you control what you want to change down here with this slider. So this is FWG for frequency, width, and gain. So gain is obviously how much of the effect, Let me turn this reverb down. That's quite intense. But so if I turn up the highs, mids, a bit loud, turn that down. And then the lows, you can get quite intense with it. So yeah, if you wanted to change a specific frequency, let's say there's too much bass, so let's I don't know, cut around like the 40, maybe around the 50 hertz type thing, and then move it to width. So on width, so if I want to, make that 50 hertz, only 50 hertz, I can bring this all the way down so that it's only covering a very small amount of frequencies. So yeah, the width basically controls how much of the frequencies around whatever you set here. So I've set 53. So the width is saying how the lower it is, the less numbers around 53 will be affected. So all the way down, you're only getting 53 hertz, maybe 54 and 55, and then 52, 51 being controlled. Whereas if I drag this all the way up, it's going all the way up to like 200 hertz or something. It's just widening the band. I'm sure most of you understand how an EQ works, but, so if I want to be more specific with the frequency, I drag it to the left. Less specific and more of a general area, just drag it to the right. But let's make it specific, and then we'll come to gain, and we'll, So you see, there's still some of those mids, but if I bring this up, it's taking all. That's just a cool little thing. So, keep control of the sound. And then down here we have a compressor. Let's find one with a cool attack. So let's go with this one. If you want to reset like a dial, on Mac, you hold the command button and then click, and then it will just jump back. Anyway, so we've gone with the kind of new compressor in Kontakt, and this one's cool because it's controlled by a mix dial. You can actually achieve parallel compression, which is where you layer a really compressed signal or a compressed signal with a dry signal, which creates a more natural sounding but thicker actual sound. So let me pick a sound that's got a good attack on it. So this one doesn't actually have a threshold dial, and the threshold is basically controlled by the input. So the higher the input, the more, the greater the threshold. So the more compressed signal. Basically, the more you go to the right, the more compressed it will sound. Ratio is ratio. To the right will go 20:1, and then down is 1:1. So again, the further to the right, the more compressed. So let's make like a really compressed tight signal here. The attack and release. So let's let the initial attacks through and then throw them up, and then the makeup game you bring up like this. So if I turn this all the way to the right, and as you can hear, it's really quiet because it's over compressed. So you use the makeup. As you can hear, it's really bringing out the tail. On those, I'm just going to bring the bass down a bit. As you can hear, it's because it's over compressed, it's bringing out the tail quite a bit. But what you can do is bring this back. So now you're getting that more natural sound, but it's also bringing up that tail a bit, because it's bringing out that compressed. Just for reference, this is the dry, and then with the compressed. Pay close attention to the tail, for example. The non-compressed one obviously dies out a bit, and then all the way up. That tail's obviously being dragged out with the compression, but then if you go halfway, you get that more initial natural sound, but it brings it out with the compression. So it's parallel compression, so you're layering the two together. So that's all the effects. The only other one down here is LFO, but this will be quite hard to show with such a short sound. So I'll do the LFO in a second. So let's move down to this sound. So the third sound down, we have an ARP. So this one isn't actually, I don't actually have it on the step sequencer because I believe this one's quite percussive. So just using a sound there to layer. Got a bit of compactor on it, making it dirty. But if I put the step sequencer on, and that little blip there, as you see, this is number 2. So I'm just holding 2 keys, as you can see down the bottom. And again, I'll just show the ADSR. So notice when I pull the filter down, it gets muffled. But let's say we wanted a little bit of attack on that. We bring over the filter here, whack up the intensity a bit. So even with the filter down, we're still getting we're still getting a cool kind of attack to it. And again, the higher the intensity, the more high frequencies you'll get in, the less. So as it was like this, it just became muffled. But let's say we just wanted the tiniest little bit of attack. We can just drag this up until we hear just the amount of click we want. So you see now it's like a percussive type sound. So and we made this. We can get all creative with that. What have we got down here? So down here we have drones. So in the library we've got a ton of drones. Not literally a ton. You couldn't weigh them. Weird. But yeah, so drones. The drones are pre-baked sound designed ones. However, like I've showed before, you can throw the effects on these. Of course, you could change the sound, the types of sound. So let's use the filter now. So I showed how to use a filter for the ADSR filter for like sharp attacking sounds. But we can also use it to, for example, open a filter. So I've got the filter all the way down. Let me just select so you can see what I'm doing with the filter wheel. So with the filter all the way down, let's bring it like half, well, 1/4 of the way up. So this is what it sounds like. So as you hear, we're cutting all the high, interesting-y bits out of the tone. But let's say we just want it to, so we don't want it to go all, we don't want the filter to close all the way back down to here. Let's say we want it to finish midway up, so we got that kind of sound. So what we'll do is we'll bring the intensity up. We'll bring it up all the way for now. And what we want it to do is we want it to open kind of slowly. So what that's doing is it's opening the filter, to the attack. So it's coming all the way like up, maybe here-ish. Well, as this is set all the way up, it's actually going all the way to the top. And then going down to about 3/4 of the way. So it'll come down to about here. As fast as this decay is, so. You heard that fast close? That's because we've got a fast decay. But if I open this up a bit, and let's bring this down so it actually comes all the way down. So now it'll just hover around this sustain. Or if we want it to go even slower, let's bring the grit down a bit maybe. And of course you can open the filter yourself. So there's we've got tons of these sounds. I'll show you a few more of those a bit later on. So yeah, actually let me show you the LFO that I was talking about. So down here we have an LFO section. We have 3 different types of LFO. We have triangle, square, and ramp up. And this works 2 ways. So you have a filter, LFO, and an amp. And like I mentioned, the amps, think of the amp as like volume. So if I play this right now, you hear the filters all the way down. So if I bring up, let's put it on triangle. If I bring up the intensity of the LFO on the filter, you can hear instantly what the LFO is doing. So think like how the ADSR controls the attack, decay, sustain, release, like it's controlling that specific parameter. It's the filter envelope is controlling the cutoff dial. The LFO is doing the exact same, except it's got a loop, it loops. So it's just going through an LFO state. So if you want a fast one, you can. And again, the intensity controls how far up it goes. So if you just wanted to add a little bit of movement, for example, just bring down the intensity so it's only moving it a little bit. If you want a bit more movement, bring it up. Again, you can use the gate if you like a square if you want a bit more rhythmic. And then, of course, you know, the ramp up sounds. And you can almost go up into the audible range. And again, you can use those while they're working alongside the step sequence or anything else. So if I click onto the amp, so we've got the filter doing its filtering thing. Let's have the filter doing, I don't know. So now we can bring on the amp. And the amp works the same way, except instead of opening the cutoff filter, it's turning down the volume, essentially. So you see you can create some rhythmic interest or just basic movement. Like I said, just adding a little bit of filter to anything can, you know, just give it a bit more movement than what you're used to. So moving down, we have this one called Thin Disturbance. So this is in the pad section. So pads are things, you know, you can... They're patches you can just play, you know, pad them out and things like that. I think I layered this with strings. And again, you've got the filter. I think in this section of the song, it's actually controlling. So yeah, this is actually layering some strings up here. You know, just adding a bit of kind of... like I mentioned, layering, you know, gives it a different tone. I could have just gone for strings there, but I wanted the whole piece to have a very synthetic thing, so I just layered some thin strings alongside the, you know, alongside the strings. And of course, you know, if you wanted, you could add some rhythmic interest. So as you see, like there's a lot you can do with any sound source just on the UI. It's almost like a synthesizer. So, you know, if you've used a synth before, you can use it, except it's sample based. So it's somewhere in between a sample player and a synthesizer. So it's like a samplizer. I'm going with samplizer. I've coined the term samplizer. Yeah. So moving down, we've got a riff. So let's just solo this out. And so riffs are basically like how in Project Alpha we had loops, you know, like low loops, mid loops, high loops. We've got a load of those as well. But, you know, we're pushing this kind of synthetic kind of sound into the mix this time, you know, shake things up a bit. We've got these riffs. So these are kind of riffs we've made on some analog synths that we've bought for the library. And then we've imported them in, so they're all tempo synced. And then you can mess with them using the UI. So as you can see, I'm running this one just through a filter. So yeah, we've got a whole bunch of those. I'll go through those in a minuet, or a minute to the English speakers among us. So moving down, we've got some more arps, just using the same kind of thing. So let me just check this one out. So this one's got, you know, the highest number's 3, so I want to hold 3 keys at least. So some of you will notice there's a bit more rhythm going on than what looks like here. Let me just turn off this for a sec. So that's what the patch would sound like, which is cool. But we've got this new thing here called the dual control, and this is probably our biggest thing about the about Project Bravo is the dual control. So this is basically I got so excited I grew a lisp. It's basically it's a rhythmic generator, and this is completely new. No one else has anything like this, so you know, this is why I'm getting excited about it. So if I turn this on while I'm playing. You can hear it's instantly adding rhythms to the track. And so let me go through what the dual control actually does. So let's turn all these things off. Get a basic sound. As you can hear, this is the bass sound, by the way. So turn the filter down. So this is like the core sound. This is what that patch was built from. And these are included, by the way. We have something called init patches, which are kind of sampled analog synths, or sample based things like cello and stuff like that, that you can drag in and create completely new patches of your own. But anyway, let's talk about the dual control. So if I play a key, this is the dry signal. And if I just turn this on, like there's no ADSR going on, there's no, the filter's all the way, filter here is all, wait, where is it? There it is. It's all the way up. So, I can even turn it off. And if I turn this on, you'll see what it does. It's an instant rhythm generator. And like I said, I'll talk about this like towards the end of the video, but we've made it so that like what we want people to do is import their own samples into the UI to use. So go around, record your guitar hits, or if you've got synths, record a few notes, import them in, and then you just run them through this dual control filter and instant rhythms. And I can change this rhythm like this. Or I can actually program like a genuine type, I don't know, some triplet-y type rhythm, like so, and then change how that interacts. Maybe like ramp up and then it goes down, then it ramps up again. So how does it work? This is kind of chaos. So it's organized chaos. That's what the dual control filter is. And so, like I said, it's an instant rhythm generator. So if it comes like this, let me take it down to one step. Oh, by the way, I didn't mention this. So on the left here, if you drag this up and down, this is how many steps of the step sequencer you're going to use. So the dual control filter is basically 2 step sequences which control. Well, they're not steps. Yeah, they're 2 step sequences which control an LFO, which is on a filter. So it's basically a really complex way of controlling a filter LFO. So the top one here controls like a stabby type forward sound like this. If I bring this down, so this is with it on. This is with the filter on. If I just bring up the top one, which is like the forward motion one. You can instantly hear what that's doing. If I bring up the bottom one, that's a reverse. It's basically like a step up. Sorry, a ramp up. And if you have them both, if you use them both together, you get a hybrid of the two. So you get a kind of it's fighting between going forwards and going backwards. And of course, if you change that up, let me for example let's have this one go all the way down over 4 steps, and this one go all the way up. It's changing over. But if you say, let's say we had like a 4 step, and then this one just kind of randomly changes in between. So you see, just by changing how these two steps are, you can create vastly different rhythms, and you throw those through a delay. Let's just turn the delay up, and the delay brings in that sense of kind of all over the placeness, because it's bringing in it's not, the steps don't work in a random fashion. I mean, there is organized chaos, so if you did this, it would sound the same. However, it's not the same each time it cycles round. So you see, it takes like more than 4 steps to get back round. So, if you're throwing the delays on there, you here it gets a little bit more chaotic. So it's really good fun. So you can control over here. If we come to the left here, like I mentioned, it's working as it's working on a filter. So the one on the left here is the cutoff. And then the one on the right is obviously resonance. And then underneath we have the stomp, which is another distortion effect, which isn't the same as grit. So you can have both on for double distortion. If you so desired. And it's worth mentioning that the LFO that this controls, the filter that this dual control actually controls, isn't the same as this filter. So, you can use the individual resonance and cutoff amount here to even affect what's going on here. So because the dual control has its own filter, its own cutoff, its own resonance, and its own stomp amount, or its own distortion amount, when you combine the two, you get even more kind of unique type sounds. So because with this off, that's the sound you're getting. So when you throw that almost like it's kind of hard to explain, but if you think of it like this, so the dual control is affecting whatever sound gets fed into it. So if you set up a raw sound first, like you want something a bit kind of resonanty, resonanty, maybe get a bit more, maybe some comp in there. A nice, like a dirty sound. And then we throw on the dual control. That's what's being fed into it. So like if I had these all the way down, just one step. As you can see, it's a different filter. So if I'm moving this filter up and down, it doesn't get rid of that muffled sound because this filter comes after this filter. So you hear, like, by setting these at different places, you get different sounds. But as this is as their individual, I can control this filter independently of this one and change what this one sounds like it's doing. As you see, I'm not moving the filter here. And again, if we throw double distortion on. So you can get really kind of creative with it, and that's one thing I love. So what's worth mentioning now is these dials to the right. So these control how fast the individual LFO speed works. So that's hard to kind of get your head around, but if I just show you, you'll understand. So this is only one step. So it's controlling how fast we go, how fast this step's control of the filter is. So we put this to 2 steps. So the way to think of this, so so these dials here control the speed that the LFO in each individual step is working. So like this is only one step, so that's now 1/64th. So each step is going at 64 times a beat, right? And then the steps, the speed that this actually cycles between steps, so on and then off. That doom sound is the off step. And you can control how fast you go through the steps down here. So the step will change every 8th beat. So you'll have, so this is full on 64ths. And this is nothing. This is not moving the filter at all. And you can control how fast you go through the steps here down at the bottom right. So that's going eighths. Now it's doing triplets. And this works the same for the step sequencer. You know, you can control the speed of it here. So, you know, then you've got a whole different layer of rhythms now. So let's just take it back to one step. Doing one step is the easiest way of showing it. So we bring this up. So now if I change the speed of the bottom one, you can hear how just changing the speed of an individual LFO rate here per step, it actually kind of creates a completely different rhythm within one step. And then, of course, if you spread that over 16, and now, you know, cycling through the steps really quick. So you can hear how insanely like creative you can get with the most basic of sound sources. I absolutely love this thing, but yeah, so like it's worth mentioning here the pattern thing. So if I click and drag these are basically like presets. So if you've got, let's say you want to go either more than 16 steps, or you want to halfway through the track change to a different rhythm, you can just click drag up here. You'll see this creates a completely different pattern. And let me just change those. Let's have this one just be, so it's easy to spot. Just be the wob wob wob, wob wob wob. And you can change which pattern you're on down here at the bottom left. So these are key switches. So by pushing these keys down here, well, that's low on my keyboard. I need to transpose my keyboard down to region. So now I can so you can change those on the fly. And let's say, for example, you wanted to extend your you wanted 32 steps. You know, the rhythm was too complex to having 16. What you do is you click the clone button, and what it'll do is it'll put whatever pattern you're on onto the next pattern, like an identical copy. So now clone 2 is cloned. So pattern 1 and 2 are identical. So let's say we wanted this to go all the way up. Let's do it with pattern 1. We wanted pattern 1 to go up, and then we wanted this to, you know, be random. Whatever, you know, any old business going on. And then we want the same thing, so we'll clone it, but we want this to be nothing. You know, so it's an easy way to get between 1 and 2, you know. So there's and that works exactly the same for the step sequencer and the gate control. It's worth also noting that whatever pattern you're on is universal. So if you change to pattern 2 in the dual control, the step sequencer will also change. We decided it was better to do it this way because you know, like sometimes you would change pattern, like, you know, pattern 2, but, you know, pattern step sequencer, for example, is still on pattern 1. And then, you know, you end up with this kind of the conflict going between the two. And there was no easy way in key switches to make. So like I mentioned, say you wanted 32 steps on the step sequencer. If you changed that and you also wanted to change the dual control at the same time, there was no way of having dual key switches. You know, that you'd end up with like 30 key switches just to be able to change them independently. But the way we've set up with the clone is, let's say you wanted to keep the step sequencer the same. You know, you can just click clone and then pattern 2. So whenever I change, you know, the pattern, the sequence stays the same. So let's say with the dual control, we want, you know, we've got nothing down at the bottom here. You know, that even though the pattern's changing because I've cloned it, and let's say the third one, let's say we even wanted to go like to 3, like this. As you can see, like the third one would have been messed up because it had a different rhythm to it. So it's just worth mentioning that's the way we did it. So, that's not a bug. We're aware of it. But yeah, my favorite feature in the library so far. But yeah, so let's carry on just scrolling through where we are. As you hear, I've kind of messed that up a little bit there, but so cover to cover. I think this has got Time Machine Pro on it. That's why it's D for D. Let me just bring that up. So as you can hear with this cover to cover sound, we've got dual control doing this crazy rhythm if I turn this off. And it's worth, like what you may have noticed, we've got the gate on. So now I can talk about the gate. Let me turn the gate off. So that's the raw sound. So the dual control's adding this rhythm to it. And then the gate control is going on top of that. So the gate control is essentially a, let me just load up a raw type sound. Come down here. So this is like our raw sound. So the gate control works kind of like a trance gate. A very simple thing to do, but very powerful. So if I turn it on, you hear it's doing this pattern here. If we come down to to 2 steps, you can have on off. Or you can have, I don't know, let's have like 8 steps and we can do like some sort of triplety type thing. And, because it's not hard on, hard off, you can program rhythms. So you can, and when you layer it with the dual control, which will instantly throw a rhythm on it, like I mentioned, raw, and then we could have it on for half of it, and then we could go into some step sequence trance gate type deal, on off, on off, on off, on off, like that. Actually, that should probably be the other way around, but like that. So, a gate, we had in Project Alpha as well. It's very easy, but it's very powerful to use. A cool little thing I thought I'd mention, actually. Like if you want to make like a step sequence glitch kind of thing. So set pattern 1 to be just make it 1 step all the way on. So it'll always be on. And then if you make pattern 2, 2 steps, but you have 1 on, 1 off. Again, make it like 32. You've got on demand like glitch kind of. Right, I'm on the wrong patch. Here we go. You can control just by changing the pattern the step sequence. Cool little trick I thought I'd fill you in on. So if I move down again, what we got here? So here we've got some ARP rhythms. So these polytype sounds are kind of cool. They're kind of like the pads, but they're more kind of leaning towards like lead sounds or just individual type sounds. And it's one of the few parts of the library where we've done round robin sampling. So like I mentioned, we had some analog gear that we were sampling for this one. So for these are genuine analog recorded round robins. So if you're playing, the delay's clicking a bit there, but these are genuinely recorded round robins. You know, there's a few of those, and they work cool in the step sequencer. You know, let's program dabba da babba da ba dabba da babba babba da babba da ba, and then I don't know, like gated at the end, on off on. No, shit, the wrong way around. There we go. And then, you know, throw these left and right. Throw some delay in there. You hear it's sorry, I get carried away, but yeah, you know, they're round robin, so you know they're particularly good at throwing through the step sequencer because you know, as round robin works, it's, you know, it's very kind of unique. Yeah, so I can now. But the way I used it down here is I just put a filter through, and then as it's round robin, I wanted to kind of show how natural it sounds when you just play fast notes on the MIDI roll. So if we move down one more time, we've got the impact section. So impacts like the booms are pre-recorded type sounds. They're sounds that we've designed for you that you know, can play back. By the sounds of it, we've cut a bit of, yeah, I've cut some of the lows on just for the sake of mix, but I'll bring that back up. Oh, I'm on the wrong thing. You have to. By the way, if that's a contact thing, to use the keyboard down here, you have to actually click on the title tab of the library to use it. But yeah. So as you can hear, they're kind of cool. Yeah, they're kind of just impacts. You know, they're what you throw on a downbeat in a big trailer. You know, da 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 da. And it's like that big kind of. I'm sure most of you can figure out where to put an impact. Impacts are particularly good for, and I have actually made a specific patch for, but I'll show you how they're built for making rhythms. So you know, I can, like I have been doing, bring down the sustain. Whack on the step sequencer. You know, cool little fun thing you can do. Again, good for throwing through the reverb. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of those pre-baked ones that you can have a play with. Let's move down a bit. So this one I actually didn't use, but this is just one of the init patches. So this has actually got an effect on it. So I must have just not decided to use this. As you heard, it faded in, but that's because the attack on the ADSR is all the way down, and the release is all the way up. So this would have sounded like this. This is what that sounds like originally, but you know, throw some reverb, delay, fattens it up, maybe, I don't know, filter down, bit of distortion, maybe the dual control doing one step. Oh, one step. So as you can hear, you can take it quite far from the original thing. And then moving down, we have the signature sounds. And signature sounds are what we called in Project Alpha brams. But with signature sounds, we've we went in a few different directions with them. I mean, some of them do sound quite brammy. As you would expect. So, they're those types of sounds. So the premise behind a signature sound is like when you see a trailer and it'll hit and there'll just be that one kind of cool, some aliens just arrived. But we also have sounds like this, more kind of, still kind of synthetic-y, kind of aggressive sounding ones, but, they're signature sounds. So, like perhaps one of the ways we actually heard like Project Alpha's signature sounds being used was that's how they would start a trailer. Like it's a black screen and then you get or and that's how it's a good way to start the actual the trailer. But yeah, tons of those signature sounds. They're pre-baked, and again, you can use the UI to get in and aggressively change things. So down here, you see I did some parallel compression. This is just a mix thing, but that parallel compression is pointing to basically my kick drum, because what I have down here is a sub bass towards the end. So this is one of the patches. Again, just accomplished by using the init patch, just a little touch of reverb and the filter, and it's a nice strong sub bass. Again, you can find a good tone and then boost the resonance a bit, or if you don't fancy doing that, we're getting that little click with a little bit of filter ADSR. I didn't want that. And of course you can come across to the gain, bring up the bass in the EQ. Sub bass is normally down around 40. So if you've got subs, you'll hear that kind of. I mean, this is. And I layered this in with the kick drum. Just a cool kind of. I think it's layered with this kick here. So let's move up to these. We've got a few more things to go through. Hope you haven't died on me yet, people. Come on, we've plenty more to cover. Anyway, I get the feeling this is going to be a long one. We'll see. But so now we're in like my rhythmic section of my track. So up at the top here, we've got this. As you can hear, a nice subby type kick sound. So what we did with Project Bravo is. One of the things people asked for that we didn't have a lot of in Project Alpha was unique type drum sounds. Just ones particularly like for Underscore. I had a few TV type composers ask me for these kinds of, when you've got like something's happening on screen, you've got like a nice drone pad or something, but you need to drive the momentum forward. They asked for sub kicks. So you got things like, let me find where we are. I need to set it. Things like. And of course, these are all being controlled by filter. So if you want a bit more tone, you've got some stuff up there. The filter's on, so there's too much click going on. You can bring the filter ADSR down. And I've got a little bit of punch, just punching that through a little bit. And if I turn the step sequencer on, you'll hear how cool it can be. Make this slow. Some delay on that. So yeah, we added a bunch of kicks, snares, hi-hat type things, all that kind of good stuff. We also added we had in the last library we had tom rolls, but what we did here is we actually got some nice cuts. That'd be the bass taken out again. we actually cut them up so that people can play them. And these are just big thuddy type sounds. Here we have it layered with this. I'm taking the bass out though, just a little bit. That's a nice. The track's all over the place now, by the way, because I've been editing as I go. Yeah, so moving down. So yeah, we've got those large tom hits again. You could throw them through the UI if you want. So here we have 3 tempo synced whoosh bangs. This was a big requested feature. So in Project Alpha, we had these types of sounds, and these are called whoosh bangs, which are basically like a build and then a hit. And they're the type of sounds that get you from one piece of music, get you from one section of the music to another section. So let's say you've had this really big action sequence, and you want to break it down to like a nice drone pad. You throw one of these in between, and it's a great way to transition. And one of the problems we had last time, or one of the requests we had last time, was that they weren't synced. So this time when we did the whoosh bangs, we made sure that they were all done to a set tempo. Of course, these are in the you can drag these the WAV files in should you so desire. So if you want one of those whoosh bangs, this is normally how I do it, but I've got lots of effects and stuff on my computer, so so you could drag a whoosh bang in, and it's, so you could bring it in, add your own effects to it that way, and then line up where their hit is, with one of these like bar lines here, or you can come in and these are these are tempo synced. So if you start them, they vary a little bit in how many bars it takes for a hit, but if you sync them to a beat, they will land on another beat. So all those kind of sounds. So they're cool. Again, a fun thing to do. I'm just going to do it one more time. I'm sorry, but dual control. Kind of little, if you want to add like a cool spin on it, but yeah. So down here we have construction loops. Excuse me. You see, I talk so much, my throat, even my throat's tired of hearing my voice. But so construction loops are basically rhythmic loops, tempo sync rhythmic loops that go. Where are we? We need to be number 4. Tempo sync rhythmic loops. So they. They're basically tempo synced rhythmic loops that go from low on the left of the keyboard to high on the right. And then, so if you just, any random keys, just throw down a chord. Or you can create like these really cool rhythmic bed type things. And we also have, if in the library, if you see something that says, let me just find this quick, instruments. I'm going through the beta list right now just because that's the one I have up, and no one wants to see how messy I am. So like if I go to the what would it be in rhythms, we have these patches called rhythm makers. If you see rhythm makers, I think we have the same in drums as well. So yeah, the rhythm maker. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm using the step sequencer so that you can create brand new loops. So if we take a listen, I'm just going to, as you can see, these numbers go up to 5. So I need to hold at least 5 keys. So without the step sequencer, you get a load of different loops. Great for creating rhythmic beds. But if you want to create a new loop, you whack on the step sequencer. And what it's doing is it's taking the initial attack of each of those loops and using it as a step. And so it's a cool way of using, sounds to create new sounds, which is one of the, like I mentioned a few times, I think now, is one of the focuses. You know, you throw some delay on that, maybe change this rhythm. So this is what it's. But if we change this to like some, like this is one of my favorite type rhythms. It's like an offbeat type thing. So a rhythm maker is a cool way of, creating rhythms that no one else has, which I absolutely love about it. I've used a few times now. So moving down, still in the drum section, we have snares and perks. These are ones with a nice tail on them. Again, if you don't want tail, you can just turn the reverb down. And these are like hyper compressed type ones, but you can compress them even further if you want, using the compressor. Maybe not that much. Like I mentioned, parallel compression is particularly good for drums. So you just bring the mix halfway down. You get a nice parallel compressed sound. And again, step sequence of material. A bit aggressive. One thing I forgot to mention is you can change to a band pass or a high pass. So if you wanted to create something a bit loud, let me turn that down. So again, the snares here I think are used actually for like a breakdown section, aren't they? So if I play this back. Wait, have I got the construction loop still in step sequence? Something's a bit loud. Oh, the snare's not playing. Why is the snare not playing? Because I've got the filter on. So yeah, drums, drum kicks, snares, hi-hats, all that good stuff. So moving down again, low rhythm maker. So like I mentioned earlier, we have the rhythm maker things. So this is taking, if I turn this off, let me just bring this up. Wrong one. So, like I mentioned, with Alpha, we had lots of low, mid, high rhythms, tempo sync rhythmic stuff, which we have, again, loads of those. Just the rhythmic stuff. And then, you can run it through the rhythm maker. So you can create some cool things there. Yep, rhythm maker. Moving down. Tempo sync. Okay, so reverse effects are, as you may imagine, they're effects that just swipe backwards. Again, this is kind of like the transition thing. And we had these in Project Alpha. Again, we've expanded the concept here. People are asking for tempo sync. So same as the whoosh bangs, if you hit a key, if you hit the key on a beat, it's going to land on a beat. Lots of, tail on these, but if you bring those down, you've got like completely flat ones if you want that gravity kind of like reverse and then end sound. You know, if you want something a bit kind of endy, or, you know, just reverb delay. Same thing. Depends what kind of track you're working on. Again, you can throw those through the effects and all that good stuff. So moving down. So in the library, we do actually have downers, which are, you know, I'll show you a little bit more in a second. You know, like a genuine downers kind of. Let me find the sample thing actually. So, you know, we've got like downer actual waveforms. If I bring it up on the audio track here. Hang on. I have multiple screens. It makes it easier for me to drag things in. So, you know, we have like your normal type downers like this. Turn this down because it's really loud. You know, so downers are like that kind of sub-boomy kind of that you get in trailers when the lights turn off, or, you know, something scary happens, or you need to add accents. So here, I actually have it in a break. A drop. So the snare hits and you get this boo sound if you listen to it. You know, it adds a bit of tension, a bit of kind of excitement to that drop section. And one of the things people were asking, again, we had downers in Project Alpha, but we've, you know, made whole new ones. One of the things people were asking for were tempo synced ones. And now you see with downers, it's a bit harder to tempo sync because there's no real there's like no transient. There's no real point where the beat would land. Like if we listen to it. Like, there's no point in that waveform which has like a definitive end or like a transitional point, you know. Where you line it up is totally up to you. So we couldn't really we can tempo sync them, but then that's us deciding where the hit is, and you may disagree with us on that. However, what we decided to do this time is make, you know, being as though the engine is flexible enough to do so, we've made it so you can actually create your own timed ones. So as you can hear, the one I have here is actually very short. So if I play it by itself, it's very short, and that's because it's being controlled by our pitch envelope here. Yeah, a pitch ADSR. So I can actually extend this just by moving the decay time. I mean, let me stretch this out a bit. You know, so say I've got like a really long kind of section where it needs to drop, you know. Or if it's really short. You know, maybe a bit of, and you know, you can create your own downers. That's why it's called the custom downer, because, you know, like you can add, you know, some. You know, so you can, it's much easier now to create your own custom, like dropper, downer, whatever you want to call it. It's one of those things, you know, like, it's one of the ones where if we'd have pre-baked it, you know, pre-baked sounds are good for some things like impacts and whoosh bangs, you know, things that have got character. Downers are more kind of a utility type thing. So you can have custom designed downers. However, you know, downers are one of those things you need to do a specific job, you know, like in this drop here, it needed to be a very specific timing. You know what I mean? If I'd have left it like this, like you would get with a normal downer. However, with this, you know, because I can time it, because I can perfectly time how that downer works, I can put it wherever I want without having to worry about like a random edit to a WAV file, or, you know, even worse, like a time stretch downer type thing. Particularly when you get into like the sub bass type things, time stretching, particularly in Kontakt One, is a bit iffy. So I think this is the best way of doing it, you know, because like I say, it's more of a utility than a sound design with downers. So yeah, so that's, I think, yeah, so if moving down here, I wanted to show that, you know, we had WAV files, but yeah, in the library we have like clickers, click loop, which are basically small instruments, violins, cellos, djembe, random things like that, played with things like chopsticks, brushes, all those kind of things, and that, you know, they're just these very quiet, clicky type things. There was a big thread on VI Control where people were saying that, you know, there isn't enough of this kind of clicky thing. So we thought we'd take a little, you know, a little stab at it kind of thing. It's one of those cool things. Let me just let me try and load in let me load in the click loop rhythm down here. So just drag this in. I'm doing this off screen again, sorry. It's easier with my file. So I've just loaded in the click loops onto number, 9? Where's MIDI 9? I need to find a MIDI 9. What's that, 8? Oh, here it is. So, you know, just lots of these little clicky. You know, they're kind of cool. And you know, normally with things like this, I would drag it out as a WAV file, you know, because then, you know, Ableton Live time stretches it, which is a little better than Kontакт's one. But the cool thing you can do with the UI, you know, you can bring it through this. Oh, that's one of the things that irritates me in Kontakt, that click and drag thing. But yeah. You know, you could change the transient attack. So, you know, it's just those little kind of clicky things. But yeah, here I dragged it in as a wave just to show we had open waveform. Same with the risers. Earlier I showed you that step sequence, like the gate control, how you can, you know, with a preset, turn on a trance gate and turn it off. I did a similar thing here. That's the effect you would get if you did it in the library. Here I just did it with volume automation, turned the volume on and off. But yeah, we have a bunch of these risers. Let me load those in. Which one? Yeah, I'll load in some risers to show you a couple. So yeah, risers. I just need to drag this up here. I'll replace the clicks. This is one of the joys, by the way, when I go between screens. It's just so much easier if I have it on a different screen and drag it in rather than having to shrink all the windows so you lose sight of where we are. So risers. You know, we've got like a bunch of these. So risers are obviously that. They're sounds that build up and, you know, over time. And then you know, you put that just before a big transition change and everything sounds awesome. You know, run it through the effects. You know, you can have a filter on it, maybe a bit of distortion, make it sound over intense. Maybe dual control, crazy rhythms. So, you know, create all these cool little things. So let's take a look at what's in the folder. This is my beta folder. So, you know, your one will be a bit tidier than this. But, you know, so we have downers, we have custom downers, which I showed you. Downers and then rhythmic downers, which rhythmic downers are like what I've been showing you by throwing the dual control and creating cool things. So the synths, I mentioned we've got like poly sounds and ARPs and we have gated sounds. I'm going to show you some of those now. Init sounds, which are just installized patches, you know, so raw waveforms from analog synths cellos, things like that. We've got a load of bass ones, riffs. Then we've got drums. So we've got sub kicks, snares, kick drums, drum breaks. I need to show you the drum breaks as well. Impacts, booms. I showed you the impacts already. Rumble hits are just, you know, more boomy type things. Risers, signature sounds, rhythms we covered. You know, we've got tons of the rhythm type sounds. Reverse effects, kind of cool. Whoosh bangs, and then drones. So let me show you some of the things that I didn't include in the track. So I've pretty much covered how the UI works by this point. I hope everybody understands pretty much how that works. So let me just load in a couple of maybe these like some poly things. So these are like you know, synthy type crap there. Let me find one I like. Oh, we got some pad type sounds I like. So these are using like so that's a cool little one. More pads, you know. I did have a key type pad. Oh, here we go. Distant Lands. This is inspired by a video game. Is it this one? So many sounds. We have over 300 patches in this library. We've got things like so ARPs, you know, things that are used in the step sequencer for fun effect. Okay. Whole bunch of sounds up here. There was one sound I was looking for. I can't remember which one it was called. Oh, Night Terrors is quite cool. It's kind of a horror type sound. So moving down, we got this, you know, whole section of gated sounds, which are sounds that are creatively using the dual control, you know. Some cool things like that, maybe some pressure. Kind of like that. And then we got like a load of bass type sounds, like these. There's so much to cover. I apologize for like the 7 hours we've been here, but what's a cool one? You know, the stepping rhythm. Maybe I think this is actually one of the ones already, so maybe not that one. Come on, corner shot. Corner shot's cool. This goes. This is a good example of like the kinetic motion ones. Just something you know, you throw in to the mix. Then the riffs, like I mentioned earlier, we've got a bunch of these types of like rhythmic. Maybe not that one. That one's okay. That wasn't the one I thought I was dragging in. Dead Sabotage. What is this? So cool riff type sounds like that. Let's close that. Then we can drag in. So we've got another section called drum breaks, which I didn't mention. So drum breaks is we decided to make some. Ignore that. That's not in the final version. Is like you know, just drum type loops. You know, just some drum sounds that you can throw into a mix. You know, you can throw under some filters. Maybe a bandpass filter. But one of the cool things we did is this is actually the patch that inspired doing the rhythm makers, you know. Because the drum breaks all have like very individual initial hits, you know, they're all using really thuddy type drums, you know, really powerful type drums. So they all have good initial information to make a good rhythm out of, a good custom rhythm out of using the step sequencer. And of course you can speed this up if you want less of an attack. So that's one of the cool things. Signature sounds, and so yeah, I think the only one I haven't covered now, other than we've got like in the signature sounds, we also have horror accents. So if you're doing a horror score, you know, throw a few of these in. They're signature type sounds, you know, cool for the horror things. Rhythms, I didn't show the middle rhythms, but things like, oh, this is the rhythm maker, so step sequence is on. Let me just turn the amp up. So again, rhythmic loops that are rhythmically synced. We've got that for low, mid, and high. And I don't think I've forgotten anything there. Oh yeah, and the drones. So I'll just take you through a few of the drones. So a lot of the drones are quite busy. Again, ignore those. This can't find the thing. We fixed that, like in the version you'll download. This is just my beta patches. So drones are just that. They're sounds or soundscapes that sit under a track to give a sense of space, to give a vibe. And with the filter, you can make them just subby. They're particularly good to throw in delay and reverb on them. It's cool. We got some metal swirly type sounds. Some nice happy type ones. So you could create some really relaxed type sounds. So yeah, that's pretty much all the kind of sample content in the library. But like I mentioned, we do have, like, one of the things we want to encourage people to do is to actually is to record their own sound. So we've included a blank Project Bravo UI. So it's like a blank preset. And the reason we did this is, like I said, we want people to record their own samples. So, if I let me start over here, for example, just record the sound of my own voice, for example. So I've set that up. For the purpose of demonstration, here is me recording my voice. So there you see, I've just recorded like a very basic kind of sample. And then, you could export that as a WAV file or whatever. Put it on your desktop. I'm just going to search in the browser here. So that's that. So imagine this is your Finder window or your C drive, whatever. So what you want to do is, if you like, I'm going to teach you how to import your own samples, because we want people to do this because the UI is flexible enough to do it. So all you do is you click on the wrench and it'll load up this. You can click script editor to get rid of all those weird buttons. So what you want to do is you want to open the mapping editor, which will bring up this keyboard here. And let's say, for example, I'd played a C note on my keyboard. This wasn't my voice, it was a C note. What you want to do is you want to aim to drag it on a C note, but as it's my voice, I can just drag it in anywhere. So I'm just going to drag it in, and you want one line. If you go up too high, it'll make, it'll make a really big box. But what you want to do is come down to these low lines here. Just bring down and drop it. I'll drop it on the C note, and it will create this yellow marker, which basically means that now that sound is in. For the purpose of demonstration, here is me recording my voice. So there you go. So now if I drag these out to the left and right, you just, hover over, and it's now covering the keyboard. And as you can see, we've got key switches down here. So you probably don't want to drag lower than like C-1.
For the purpose of demonstration.
For the purpose of demonstration, here is me recording my voice.
So there you go. So that's how you get the sound in, right? And now I'm going to tell you how to set them up. It's easy as that. I mean, I could go from there. But so then what you want to do is close the mapping editor, just click on it, and then go to the wave editor. And you'll see a visual representation of your sound. For the purpose of demonstration here. So let's drag to somewhere interesting. Purpose of demonstration here. Purpose of demonstration here. So that's kind of rap. And then let's say it was something we wanted to loop. Let's just bring this ending, because if I just wanted purpose. Purpose of, but let's have the whole thing. So now if I wanted a loop, I can just click this number 1, create like a yellow box. That's basically a loop. So, So now the sample loops. But what we want to do is just drag these. If you see like here, it'll create like a little line like that. You want to drag that in and drag over where you want your line to be. So let's put it maybe here. So now purpose of demonstration here is purpose of demo. Now let's say, for example, we wanted like a soft loop. Purpose of demonstration here is me demonstration here is what you want to do is you want a crossfade, and as you can see, we just drag this in. I tend to prefer going with sampler. It's a little bit easier on the on your hard drive. You can change the type here. If you've got something like a guitar and you want to tempo sync it, you'll probably want to use Time Machine Pro, but I'll go over that in a second. So now purpose of demonstration here is me demonstration here. So the crossfade basically, if you have a loop point somewhere busy, you'll normally get a click on the loop. Purpose of demonstration here is me demonstration here is me demonstration here is me demonstration. Or, at best, a hard cut like that. If you put a crossfade in, it just basically softens up the loop point by adding in a little bit of information just before. Purpose of demonstration here is me demonstration here is me demonstration. So that's it. So that sound is now that's now in. That I can now play that. If it was a tempo sync loop, for example, I'd now come over to the sync slice. And I would, if it was something like guitar, something tonal, I'd click Time Machine Pro. Purpose of demonstration. So as you can hear, that is now playing at the same speed, regardless of what key I push. However, if it's something like a drum loop, what you want to do is hit Beat Machine, and then you can adjust whatever tempo it is. If I'd recorded at 90 beats per minute, you change that to 90.
For the purpose of demonstration.
For the purpose of demonstration.
And if it's in 16ths, blah, blah, blah. But as this one isn't, I'm going to turn this off. One thing to notice is that if you use Time Machine and Beat Machine,
Purpose of demonstration.
You can't use the crossfade.
Purpose of demonstration here is me demonstration.
You can't use the crossfade for the loop. So I'm just going to turn that off or change this to sampler. So now we have our sample loop. It's all set up. Now we have a sound in Project Bravo. It's
purpose of demonstration.
I now have a Daniel James voice sound. Now, I've said a few times how to, you could create something cool, so I could put on step sequence. And as you hear, those go ba 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 ba, which isn't a very desirable sound. So I'm going to teach you a little trick here. In this source section, if you click on Add Modulator and then have a random unipolar, that just means randomly you can change the sample start. So now it's randomly just going to move around. This is good if you've got like a synth and you've recorded like an analog synth sample, because then it will skip through like a real synth does. But if that's going a little bit too crazy, I can bring this in. So now it's only going over this little So now that's going to randomly start, but it's a little bit kind of clicky. So I'm going to bring this and bring the attack up, just to get rid of that click. And let's make it shorter, so it's more of a... So now it's got more of an angle to it, but I'm gonna do my favorite little rhythm that I was just doing a second ago, like. But now let's put a filter on it, and let's do that filter ADSR, make it clicky. Put some distortion on it. So you see we've got like a nice rhythmic thing, but maybe some delays. So I'll bring up the delay, make it, like some triplet type. Bring that down. It's a bit too intense. Maybe compress it a little bit, over compress it, let the attack through, bring the release. But parallel compress it. Now that's it's very static, so I'm gonna maybe drag some of these panning to the left and right. So now we've got a bit of movement. Maybe we want some dual control in there. Let's just bring it down to one step, get the tone. Ooh, move back down. Here we go. Maybe like some weird kind of ramping pattern with something random underneath. And maybe like on for the first few steps and then off, like some sort of wild beast type sound. I don't know. Maybe a bit of movement on the initial filter so I don't have to move it manually. So you see we got a cool sound. If I just take it away until we're left with the bass sound again, I think that's a good demonstration of how kind of flexible you can be with the UI. So if we just take everything away. Purpose of demonstration here is me. Demonstration here is me. Demonstration here is me. Purpose of demonstration. Purpose of for the purpose of demonstration here is me recording my voice. So there you see, I've taken that simple recording of me, saying that one single line, and just by running it through the UI, I was able to create like a usable kinetic motion patch. One of those patches that kind of drives through the music. And that's what kind of got me excited about the whole dual control filter particularly, because like just having that by itself for the purpose of demonstration here is me recording my voice. Even though that's not particularly rhythmic itself. For the purpose of demonstration here is me recording my voice. For the purpose of demonstration here is me recording my voice. For the purpose of demonstration here is me even though I'm just turning things on there. Oh, that's like some really liquidy type sound. You know, that you could throw that into a track and it would work. And that's one of the, like I mentioned at the beginning, that's one of the aims that we've had with Project Bravo, is we wanted to make it so that like you guys that are going to end up using the library, you know, you can take whatever you want. You could take a sound of you hitting a guitar. Maybe you've got like a friend who's a good singer. You've recorded just an ah sound. You know, you've got your own drum sounds. You've got your own whatever, you know, your own synths, your own samples, whatever it is. You record a hit of that, you drag it into the Bravo UI, and you can create. I mean, if I could do that with my own voice, imagine what you could do with, you know, like a guitar type sound or, you know, something along those lines. And I think that's kind of, you know, what's got me most excited about Bravo, and, you know, what I'm hoping you guys really, go for. So like I said at the beginning, we've got whoosh bangs down as drones, drums, impacts, reverses, rhythms, risers, signature sounds. We got all these crazy synth sounds, you know, that you could see in front of you. But whereas that was the focus, and that seems to be the focus for most sound design sample libraries, you know, ours, whatever's going out on the market, it seems to be focused on pre-baked sounds. You know, you get the sounds, you play it back, and that's it. Whereas what we've decided to do is make it so that like anybody, like even if you're no good at creating synth sounds or anything along those lines, you know, anybody can get stuck in and create a sound. It's literally, let me show you how easy it is. I mean, I just showed you with my voice, but the aim is so that anybody, regardless of how good they are with synths and stuff, can come in and, you know, particularly with the dual control, just turn that on, and then you know, a monkey could do this. Just drag across, make some things, and then hold a key. You know, it's that easy to come in and create something cool that's completely original. Because this patch, this rhythmic patch doesn't exist in Project Bravo as a patch. However, you know, how quickly did I make it then? I loaded it in and I turned it on and dragged across and make a completely different rhythm just by doing this. And that's the focus. That's you know, that's our attempt to push the whole medium forward. So instead of having just those pre-baked things, you know, that everybody's done before, you know, we're trying to take what's come before and build on top of it, and, you know, give you guys something both fun and like creative to do. So yeah, that's pretty much everything in Project Bravo. I apologize that this has taken so long. For those of you who've wondered where my videos have been, I've you know, my review videos, my internet's been since I moved house into my new studio, my internet's been 0.3 megabit upload. So one of these videos takes about 2 days to upload. So it's been impractical for me to upload videos. But there are more coming. You know, I'm not just going to talk about Project Bravo from here on out. But yeah, so I hope, you know, that's everything I can cover about Project Bravo. So I hope you guys have enjoyed watching how I particularly use it. I hope you found like what we've done with the UI interesting. I'm really, you know, curious to hear what you guys think of like our new ideas and, you know, all these types of sounds and stuff. And I'm, you know, even more than that, I'm excited to hear what people actually do with it. Like I say, because like even somebody who has no idea how to program a synth can come in, just twiddle a few things and have something amazingly cool. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of, I guess, in-depth look at the library, and you know, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If not, I'm sorry I wasted your time, but yeah, thanks for sticking with me this entire time, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.